Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co-host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran, military spouse, and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Absolutely. Thanks, Enrique. We have with us DJ Reyes. Guess what? He's a national advocate on veteran treatment courts and veteran legislation, all the way from Tampa, Florida. DJ Reyes, welcome to the show. Tell us about you.
Well, first of all, thanks, Vince and Enrique, for having me. It's good to be with fellow veterans. To start it off, for your listening audience, like many probably, I was an Army brat. You know, I was a military brat. My dad was a Korea War and Vietnam War veteran for 25 years. So although my family was originally from Hawaii and I was born in Triple Army Hospital, oh yeah, shaka bra. I traveled around quite a bit, in the United States and overseas. So we were a family of one, and didn't have extended family, which was very challenging. But I learned a lot of lessons learned. Later on, I graduated from the University of Notre Dame in '79, and that's when I got commissioned as a lieutenant in the Army. I also received my Juris Doctor in general law from Temple University School of Law. And then later on in the military, I went to the U.S. Naval War College and got my master's degree in national security and strategic studies. That was a wonderful year because that was after a deployment from the invasion of Iraq in '03 and '04. So I needed that break. So I retired from the Army with a little over 33 years active duty. I commanded and held staff positions in military intelligence and special operations, special forces assignments worldwide, with multiple combat and contingency tours worldwide, including Iraq and Afghanistan. But what I believe is the most fulfilling part of my life thus far is when I retired. Because when I retired, I knew then that I wanted to give back to the community and I wanted to get involved in the very community and provide community service. And so that's how long story short, I got involved with the Veterans Treatment Court. In 2013, we didn't have one, but I found out through a friend that they were standing one up. And so I met with the first judge and he asked me to help him, and which is what I did. And the rest is really history on that. And we can talk about that a little later. But the other community service activities I'm just as proud of. I currently serve and am appointed on the Tampa Bay Citizens Review Board, which is a volunteer citizens board that oversees police actions, specifically the use of force and deadly force, the use of body cams, and interactions with the community. I think that it's a very important and meaningful board and interface with our community. And then finally, I support my wife's efforts. She has a 501c3, the Diversity Action Coalition, which advocates and supports our local military and civilian families of special needs and disabled kids. So we're really involved with the EFMP program that you guys are aware of in all of the services.
That's amazing, DJ. And you mentioned EFMP. I was part of EFMP while in service, so I know it very well. And such a joy to hear your involvement on the veteran side with the judicial system. It's a thing, right? And we really do need some advocates in that arena. And so we thank you for that. Now, tell us a little bit about the work you are engaged in as a national advocate on veteran issues.
Well, I will. But before I get to that, let me just mention a little bit about the Veterans Treatment Court first for your listening audience, for those that don't know about it. So the Veterans Treatment Court, in essence, is a problem-solving court in a criminal court system, but it's a problem-solving court. Its main objective is to identify, treat, and rehabilitate veterans who find themselves embroiled in the criminal justice system, oftentimes as a result of a service-connected injury, condition, or disorder. You would know some of these conditions, such as PTSD, substance and alcohol abuse, or military sexual trauma. We deal with this all the time in our court. And so I support this program by I have established, and I currently oversee the Volunteer Veteran Mentor Network. These are local veterans or active duty service members who give of their own time to mentor, coach, and teach. Wow, familiar terms, right? Coach, teach, mentor other veterans and help them not only get through the court system, but through our robust community resource network that we have here in Tampa Bay, and the 501c3 that I have that actually provides funding. We help veterans with all their other issues, because when they come to the court, we realize they have a duffel bag that they empty out, and it's got all kinds of other problems. Specifically, I need housing, I need employment, I got to go back to school to get a trade certification, I don't have a car, I don't have food. All these 5 I've seen over the 9 years that I've been working in this Veterans Treatment Court. And so we kind of looked at it ourselves as a one-stop shop. They come into our court, we get them well with the VA, get them the medical treatment and therapies, but at the same time, we try to take care of all those other things. We feel that by doing that, we are building resiliency and wellness of the veteran. We're reintegrating them back with their families and loved ones. We're putting less stress on the community, because we're keeping them out of jail and we're keeping them engaged. And we're saving our taxpayers a lot of money, because again, we're keeping them out of jail, we're keeping them engaged in the community, and we're giving back to the community, our veterans, trying to make them as whole as possible. Now, you asked me a question about at the national level. I did not want to forget that. At the national level, I've gotten involved because of the VTC. I've gotten involved in legislation. One of them, we are very fortunate. I was involved in lobbying for, and I actually briefed it at the White House and then on Capitol Hill, the Veterans Treatment Court Coordination Act of 2019. It was sponsored and authored by then U.S. Representative from Florida, Charlie Crist. So I went with him and other veteran advocates, and we were able to lobby it successfully. It was passed in Congress and it was signed into law by President Trump back in August of 2020. Basically, what that law does is authorize and enable federal funding for all 50 U.S. states and U.S. territories to establish their veteran treatment court programs. So that's a wonderful thing. The other thing for veteran legislation, it just happened. You just saw 2 days ago, I believe, President Biden just signed the Pact Act. So at the Florida level, I've worked with a couple of our U.S. representatives on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, because this is a bipartisan issue. And we were able to, 3 years ago, when I got involved in this, I was able to assist in some of the language on one of the 7, what would be 7 House versions of the bill, which then got combined, as you know, and Representative Takano had the composite House bill, which then got sent up to the Senate. So I got involved in that, and it was a wonderful day. In fact, earlier this morning, I sent a note of thanks to John Stewart, because John, as you know, was a national advocate. And John, just to let you know, in 2019, was the MC for the SOCOM Warrior Games here in Tampa. And I and my wife were on the planning committee. And it was in June of 2019 where John and I spoke about this, about the burn pits. And I told him, hey, look, you did great work in 9/11. We got a bigger problem for you. It's called the burn pits. The rest is history. You've seen what John Stewart has done. So like I said, I just sent him an email this morning. So those are just a couple of things that I'm working on. There's more, but those are 2 of the highlights.
You know, I understand why after retirement it's so fulfilling, because you definitely are hitting the landscape, not only in Florida, but also nationally. And thank you for what you and your wife are doing. Really needed the wholesomeness of a veteran, because it's not just the compounding issues that they go through the judicial system. It's a lot of other things, as you mentioned, homelessness, you know, get food on the table, get work, get jobs. So thank you, DJ. So talk about the impact you do. How does the work you do influence or impact the veteran community as a whole?
I thought about that. I've asked that a lot. And the only way I can answer it is kind of how I already answered it already, to put it very simply. Through the flagship program that we have, the Veterans Treatment Court, and then its attendant tentacles out in the community, what we're doing is we're saving lives, and we're also restoring lives. And it's personal. And I know you guys understand this. When you look at a service member, especially one in need, 9 out of 10 times, you're not just looking at that service member. Behind that service member and aside that service member is normally a spouse, loved ones, kids, extended family. Especially like in the case of the burn pits. It may have been a service member that was affected or unfortunately have passed, but look at the trail of tears and the collateral damage it has done to the rest of those that are impacted by that. And so for the Veterans Treatment Court and some of these other initiatives that I work on, I believe it saves and restores lives. It reintegrates the veterans back with the families. There's nothing more fulfilling for me, and it gets emotional during the Veterans Treatment Court during graduation. When you see a veteran graduate, and then they provide a testimonial to the court on how this court saved their lives. I'm going to share just one example of the Veterans Treatment Court. It happened in the first couple of years that I got involved. A veteran graduated. He's with his wife and his little baby. He was a Marine. He was hooked on opioids. Okay, he graduated. He says his testimonial. Everybody stands up, they're clapping. Everybody's crying. They're cheering. He walks away. His wife passes me with the baby. She nods. I give her a nod. She walks 2 steps past me. She stops. She gives the baby back to her husband. She goes, hold on a second. She turns around and she comes back to me. She comes right up to me. She hugs me and she whispers in my ear. Do you know what she says to me? Here's what she says to me. Thank you for giving my husband back to me. I started breaking down and crying. It hit me like a brick wall. And then I realized I have to do this court. I cannot tire. I have to keep picking myself up, and I have to keep motivating others to come with me. We cannot give up. And believe me, this court has faced a lot of challenges, legal challenges, organizational culture challenges, especially when you have to deal with military versus civilian and law enforcement and all that. We've weathered through it. That's why when the burn pits passed, that's why when I sent that note to Jon Stewart, I said, hey, the cause was just, the right people led by you were selected to fight this, and you never gave up. I said, that's the formula for success. Thank you on behalf of all of our veterans and their families. Thank you for service to the nation.
Man, DJ, you weren't supposed to make us cry, bro. Well, I tell you that, and I get teared up as well. Those words are not just when you hear them from a spouse, they're from way down deep. That's not a common day occurrence, and so that you truly are making the impact that you were set out to make. And so thank you for that. Now, this next question is just probably loaded when you talk about what's on the horizon for DJ with all that you're involved with. But what is on the horizon?
I'm glad you asked that. I have a few things I do want to share with you. So when I mentioned to you about some of the issues, that the collateral issues that veterans bring when they come to the court, and one of them is housing. So through the power of social media, I was contacted by a Rochester, New York based company known as CDS Housing. They're a 501c3 under the umbrella CDS Monarch. CDS Housing, 501c3, specializes in low-cost, affordable housing projects for the developmentally disabled and for veterans. They reached out to me and they said, hey, look, we did our homework. We know what you're working on down there. We know who you are. And we know that Florida is a hotbed for veterans, which is true. And Tampa Bay region, the most populated veteran county is Hillsborough County in Florida. And Florida right now is number 3, soon to be number 2. Will eclipse Texas as the most populated veteran state in the nation very soon. But they said, we'd like to replicate our successful housing program that we have in Rochester down in Florida. Would you like to join our team? And this was last year. And I said, of course. And so, in fact, I'm getting ready to go later on this month. In fact, the end of the month, for 2 days, I'm going to Tallahassee, to the state capital, to knock on doors and talk to legislators and do all that stuff, all the hard work with regards to, hey, we need to win hearts and minds because we need to set up this program, given in mind the challenges that this nation faces now with housing. But that is one of the things that I feel very, very strongly about. And I see this firsthand in the foxhole with many of our veterans that are actually in the Veterans Treatment Court. Some of them come in as in a homeless status. And then through the VA, thank God for the VA and the HUD-VASH program, we're able to get them vouchers and we're able to get them supplemental income so that they can get housing. So that's one example. That's housing. The other thing that I'm working on is, again, I got reached out, this case, by one of the federal district court magistrates here in Tampa. So federal level court, the judge reaches out to me and says, hey, look, I have a veteran who's a defendant. And I can't get into all the charges or anything, but the bottom line is, he said, I need for you to consider helping me because you have access to all the Veteran Treatment Court resources. But at the federal court level, we have no Veterans Treatment Court. So he would get nothing. Can you help? Can you come to court and talk to us? I said, I will. This was almost 3 months ago. I appeared before the court. I informed the court on the Veterans Treatment Court and what I could do as a veteran mentor. The judge then appoints me by my volition. He appoints me as a volunteer veteran mentor for the defendant. And he says, hey, defendant, you got to listen to Colonel Reyes. He's going to tell you what to do. He's going to hook you up with the VA. He's going to get you housing, employment, education, transportation. He's going to do all that for you. You have to do that because I'm mandating that. It's a court order. So now I'm working with this defendant. The 1 meter target is to get the defendant well, get him out of court, get him well, get him on his way, like I do in the VTC. The strategic goal is to talk the judge into establishing a federal level Veterans Treatment Court. First ever. We want to do it first here in Tampa. Okay, hold that thought. Number 3, aligned with that, was reached out at the same time 3 months ago by members of the U.S. tribal court system in Arizona. And they said to me, hey, we got problems. We got Native American combat veterans, same issues on the reservation. We know about the Veterans Treatment Court. We Googled, we found your name. We're reaching out to you and your folks. Is there any way you can help us? We've already had a Zoom session with their staff. The 23rd of this month, I have another Zoom session with them. It's our intent for them to hopefully fly us out. There's a group of us, fly us out to Arizona on the reservation. If not Zoom, but I told them I want to go in person because I like to do in person. And I want to sit down and do, which I've done before, a 2-day conference, workshop conference, help them establish their Veterans Treatment Court. We have all of our SOPs, our policies and procedures. We're willing to sit down and walk the dog with them. We want to get that going. First ever U.S. tribal courts. Yeah, so that was the third thing that I wanted to mention to you at the national level. What's on the horizon?
You know, DJ, all I can say, this is going to be a worldwide implementation coming from your footsteps and all the hard work and sweat, tears, and blood you have done. So I know this is going to be something that not only Arizona and New York has reached out, but folks going to be reaching out from all over the world. So prepare yourself well because it's happening. And I know it will be coming to fruition very soon because it's needed.
Well, Vince, I got to tell you, you're like Nostradamus, because a couple of years ago, one of our professional military colleagues from the Navy military came out here and visited with us, and then came to our court and observed the VTC, and then we gave him everything and prepped him, and then he went back, and then he briefed his Italian government. And then likewise, I keep in touch with a lot of my Navy War College colleagues, my allied partners. So I've done the same thing. I've shared my stuff with my UK partner and with my Greek Navy partner. So, and they want to do everything you just said. They said, wow, we don't have this. And I'm like, brothers, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Here you go. You already understand English. Just translate it to your language, even the English. Translate it to your Queen's English, and then white out, and then put whatever names or whatever you want. But we have the template here because all the other countries they're dealing with the same thing as we are.
Absolutely, definitely so. Well, again, your efforts are not going to be going to the wayside. They're going to definitely fruitful for every country, every place you hit and touch. So thank you for that. Let's transition somewhat. I know, and we'll share. Folks that that are listening want to know how to get a hold of you. They'll hear that at the end. But right now, let's transition into leadership. Tell us, DJ, what do you do in your spare time that aids you to thrive in your professional life?
I have no spare time. all, all, all my spare time is what you just heard. This is what I live for. It's a purpose-driven life. It's mission impact. I have to try. I'm a problem solver. All of us are problem solvers. We make up problems so we can solve it. And so, but whatever little time I have, I devote to my family. I didn't share with you earlier, but I have 15-year-old triplets. Yeah. And so they keep us busy. They're in high school now. They just started their sophomore year in high school. And again, like I mentioned earlier, yeah, thank God for that. There is a God. And I'll talk about God in a minute. But my wife's 501c3, that keeps us busy because a lot of the signature events she does in town actually dovetail with my veteran events. So we've collaborated. Imagine that in a marriage, you actually have to go agree and collaborate. It's forced me to be a better husband and actually work with my wife better. And it's actually worked out wonderfully. But that, quite honestly, it's my 24-hour day. I fill it up that way.
That your question is right. What spare time? Because we're always oriented. Our minds and our hearts and our spirit is oriented to solving problems. That's what we do. The military breeds us that way. From very young to the very old, that's what you do, solve problems. So I understand it very well, and Vince does too. He understands it very well. He's been in that routine here lately. But when you talk about all the time you spent in service, all the things that you are involved with now, you've learned a lot, you've shared a lot, you've collaborated a lot. But what advice would you that you received while you was in service and growing up? I'm kind of like you. I'm a other guy, Capole. So we're gonna have to talk about that later. But what advice did you receive growing up or in service that you would like to pass on to emerging leaders, new leaders that are coming up today?
Enrique, that's a wonderful question because you all can relate to this. One of the benefits of serving, as you all know, for many years is that you can't help but collect lessons learned on good leadership and bad leadership. But it's all leadership, and you keep it in your kit bag so you know what right looks like and what wrong looks like. So I just wanted to first say that. Having said that, I do participate in a lot of different types of leadership conferences, especially in our community involving our youth. I'm asked to always speak. And one of the things I share with them is that when I was in the military, I was able, when I retired, actually before I retired, and I was a brigade commander at the time, I compiled my own version, which I call the Reyes' Top 10 Rules of Leadership. And I actually have a slide presentation on it. And so it helped me for incoming folks that were coming in. When you give your incoming brief, that was part of my incoming brief. I talk about my top 10. Well, let me just share two of them with you, if it's okay. I want to share my first rule and my 10th rule. And the way I used to pitch it to folks is, look, they're bookends, kind of like in football with the defensive ends. You got the bookends. You're never going to remember all the stuff in the middle. But if you remember the first one and the last one, you're going to be good to go. And none of these are novel. You know them better than I do, but they really apply in life and in our experiences. So the first rule is be your brother's and your sister's keeper. Be accountable and be self-accountable. I think that last one is a challenge for many folks. They like to tell people what to do and not to do, but they don't have a good time policing up after themselves. I think if people did a little bit more time policing up after themselves, they would be good. So that's the first rule. Here's the 10th rule. It's 2 parts. The first part is very simple. It's the golden rule. People want to be treated with dignity and courtesy. They want to be heard. They want to be respected. They don't want to be disrespected. Okay, so that's true. But you got to remember, you got to do that. You have to afford that to other people as well. And if people do that, then we'll probably have better communication and we'll have a better, more collegial environment. The second one, as I mentioned, alluded to earlier, a lot of what I do is faith-based driven. I just believe. I believe for a lot of reasons. But what I believe is that God is the greatest mathematician in the world. And the reason why, to me, that God is the greatest mathematician in the world is when he created man, he put on him 2 ears and 1 mouth. And so that told me already that ratio, I can remember that one. 2 to 1, 1 to 2. Listen twice as much as you talk half as much as you listen. And so I would share those 2 rules and the second rule with 2 parts to any young leader. As a side note, I sit on one of my U.S. Congresswoman's Service Academy nomination boards. And I always bring this up. And I got to tell you, the kids of today, we have some really bright kids. We've got a great future. But what they need is they need good leaders, good gray beards, good folks that can coach, teach, and mentor. If we just do that, what you guys are doing now, right? What you got, I wish I could. I don't have the ability. But if we would do that, I think this nation will always be in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely, DJ. Thank you for sharing those pearls of wisdom. I love that God is the greatest mathematician. That's a pretty amazing saying. And, that's why we have 2 of these and 1 of these, right? So, but yes, it's definitely, harnessing our own power and giving back, service before self. As you mentioned, purpose-driven life, living that life and giving back to our youth and having them understand the greatness of leadership that we evolved from, and we want to play it forward to them. So great advice. I love those tips that you shared. Let's talk a little bit now about challenges. When we all face challenges, what do you do specifically when you are faced with a challenge that you're currently facing or have faced in the past?
Well, actually, I think for me, it's a combination of factors that I rely on whenever I come up onto a challenge or a stumbling block, if you will. I mentioned the first one. First and foremost, my faith informs me of what's happening and what's going to happen. And I kind of use that as my moral guidepost. And I've never been led astray. So that's first and foremost. And I don't apologize for that. The second, I've maintained since I was a little kid, a set of values and principles that quite honestly, I learned when I was growing up as a kid in a military family. And I mentioned this earlier about growing up in a military family, being separated from the extended family, didn't have the privilege of having an extended family, did not have the privilege of, like many of my friends who grew up in a town and the entire time and knew everybody in town. I was moving every 1 to 2 years. And I remember moving. And I remember when my dad was in Vietnam and left. And I remember a lot of sad times. But I believe through it all, it really instilled a sense of independence and, quite honestly, resilience in me that I would believe is common to many of our kids today that are military brats, because they don't have a choice. You have to survive. And we do it in different ways. But I think growing up, I reflect on it and how my parents raised us and being in the military. So that's the second thing. And then the third, while being in the military, the Army, and we mentioned this already, Enrique talked about it, problem solving. I mean, they teach you how to problem solve. I mean, you learn how to identify issues, plan, organize, task organize, resource, and then execute. And then do that knowing there's going to be variables, fog of war. You're not going to get everything you need. You're not going to get all the people you need. It's not going to be on your timeline. And for those deployed, the enemy gets a vote. And when you mix all that up in that beef stew in that pot, you want it to taste good. You don't want it to taste bad. And so, so I learned a lot. The military has blessed me with that, and then the ability to apply that in leading troops and commanding troops. And now I believe that I can take all of that and look at it from a 50,000 foot perspective and apply it now post-military and look at my street level, my neighborhood, my community watches, which I tell everybody all the time. It starts here, folks, in your house, in your family, on your street, with your neighbors, and then it grows up. And that's how we have to do it. Don't depend on the cavalry to show up from Capitol Hill or from the state. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's going to have to be, it's going to have to come from each one of us as citizens. So those are some of my thoughts on how I deal with some of the challenges.
Absolutely. And when it tastes bad, that's why they give you that little hot sauce bottle in the MRE, right? That's what that bottle's for. So I got
my big bottle in the kitchen, and my doc just told me the other day, you need to lay off the hot sauce. And I said, hey, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die with a smile on my face.
And, it's those little nuances of service that just unites us, right? Who would have thought that a little hot sauce bottle would unite so many branches? But it has, right? And that's how we do a change. There's not everything is going to be in the box. Not everything, right? But there's a lot of trading. Talking about MREs, there's a lot of trading that goes on when those things pop open. And so even in mealtime, we deal with change. So talking about change and the certain things that we do and certain things that you may do around strategizing when you're dealing with change. What are some of those things?
Well, the one thing I do want to share on that question, Enrique, because that's a very thoughtful question, and I want to refer back to the Veterans Treatment Court, and specifically to the senior mentor leaders that I've designated that run the respective teams. And here's what I want to share with you. When you ask about strategies on how you deal with change and all that kind of stuff, one of the beauties of having identified senior level mentors to help me with the program and run other mentors on their teams is that it doesn't matter what service you're from, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard. The warrior ethos and the culture and the principles of war remain the same. And so when I looked at my senior mentors, and I have other retired colonels, command sergeant majors, chief master petty officers, I've got Navy SEALs, Green Berets, AFSOC, you name it, I got them all, and I got them as seniors. All I needed to do was tell them this: hey guys, you were former commanders and leaders, okay? You're going to coach, teach, and mentor. This is the new mission. Here's the mission statement. I gave them the mission statement. I said, here's your specified tasks. Here's your implied tasks. Here's the resources that you have. Here's how we're task organized. Go forth and do great things. From there, we built the program. It was, for me, I was very fortunate. I didn't have to worry about strategizing on, okay, how am I going to build Noah's Ark on this? How am I going to train these guys? All I did was rely on what I knew best, the military, and how the military is the greatest teacher of building organizations and teams. Yeah, I mean, they really are. And that, quite honestly, that's my very simple response to your question. I've been blessed. I've been honored. I could talk for hours on my senior mentors alone. And I'm just going to mention one of them. So I've got we call ourselves the GOM Council. GOM stands for Grumpy Old Men. Okay. And I've got combat Vietnam War veterans on there. One was a Green Beret and one was a Marine. Okay. It's that all the way to the current wars that we have now. Well, this one guy in particular, and I'm saying it because I'll get a link on it. He's going to see it, and then he's going to see me talking about him. used to be the security company commander at Camp David as a young Marine captain for then President Reagan and his wife, Nancy. And I've got pictures of him with the president, and he tells the funniest stories about him and President Ronald Reagan. But aside from the laughter and the joking around, I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, I can't believe I'm sitting next to this guy. And this guy now is a volunteer. He's like 75, 76 years old, and he's still a volunteer and doing other volunteer service. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention. These senior mentors that I have, all these retired guys, this is just one thing that they do. They're either chapter presidents or commanders of their VFW posts, their American Legion chapters, or different VSOs. They're all continuing to give back. And the biggest challenge I have is getting on their schedule because they're so busy, or, and this is on a more serious note, monitoring their health, because they're all getting up in age, and a lot of them, all of us, have already, you know, we have to keep watching our health and our status. And I told that to my VTC judge. I said, you cannot give me a problem with a veteran that we cannot solve. That is not my challenge. My challenge is taking care of the force, sustaining the force. That's really what it is at this point. So what we're embarking on now, and we have been, is identifying and training, recruiting and training the next generation, the bench, the bullpen. We're developing that now because we know they're going to very soon in time take over for all of us, because none of us are expendable. We were never meant to be expendable. But the legacy is that the program continues and we continue to serve our veterans in need. I think you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Absolutely. What I will say was GOM for me stands for Great Outstanding Men. So I want to just share that because you all are outstanding, and what you're doing at a national advocacy level for Veterans Treatment Court is outstanding. And I will also say that folks listening in, they were like, man, how do I get a hold of this gentleman, this individual, this ambassador who's a vessel to serve our veteran community? So DJ Reyes, tell us how we get a hold of you.
Well, first of all, for anybody out there who they think I owe them money, I'm not going to tell you how to get a hold of me. But for those of you that would like to get a hold of me or learn more about, you guys are laughing like you know what I'm talking about. Okay. In all seriousness, 2 websites. My personal website, and through my personal website, you can also connect on me there on all my social media, Facebook and LinkedIn. But that is www.cuspisvir.org. Let me spell that. www.cuspisvir.org. So if you're going to ask me, or you're asking, what the heck is Cuspis Vir? It's a Latin word and it means something. But if you get to the website, I explain it and it will all make sense to you. The second website is for our Veterans Treatment Court and the Mentor Program. If you're interested in that, and especially wherever your listening audience is throughout the United States, they can check up with their local county court for their program. But I have all the information here. It is www.hillsborough-county-mentors.org. One word. Hillsborough is HILSBOROUGH-COUNTYMENTORS, all one word. And then you can find out all about our program. You can contact me on that website and ask questions. I have resources on there. I post all the media interviews and articles and such on there as well. It's a good resource place to start. And I've had several folks throughout the country actually reach me through our own website. So those are the 2.
Outstanding. And we'll make sure to have that as part of the video and show notes so that everybody can get a hold of you, DJ. It has been a pleasure. I am amazed. You know, you talk about time, but you're making every effort to exhaust that time. And but we're so gracious that the activity that you're investing in is one that it's number one near and dear to our hearts. You know, still dealing with veterans, still lobbying for veteran entities and things that will enrich us post service. So thank you so much for that. And folks, if you want to get a hold of the Leadership Void podcast, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is where you'll send that commentary or that request. If you would like to see a specific topic covered on leadership, we would love to entertain that. Or if you would like to see a guest, we will look at that as well. But today, DJ, thank you so much for all that you are doing and continue to do. And we wish you continued success.
Again, gentlemen, it's been my pleasure, my honor for you to reach out to me and allow me an opportunity and another platform to spread the good gospel. And that is, we got to take care of the tribe, because this is now the tribe.
Absolutely. As far as taking care of the tribe, we do something else as well. We have Radio Check every 1st and the 15th, 1900, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, checking in our brothers and sisters of arms, basically the military first responder community. Come check us out on LinkedIn Live, 1st and 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And everything's possible from Home Team Mortgage as our sponsor. Thank you for sponsoring. But today is all about DJ Reyes. Have a great day and keep doing the great work.
Cool.
Cool.